Picture this. You're holding a crystal glass. It's an heirloom, vintage, dripping with history you didn't even live through, but somehow carries all this weight in your hands. Now, imagine your grip just fails. The sound it makes hitting the floor isn't a cinematic explosion. It's a dry, sharp, definitive snap. You stare at the shards, and for a split second, your brain tries to pull off a biological miracle. It projects a mental image of the glass flying back into your hand, perfectly intact. But the glass doesn't budge. It just sits there, glinting, completely indifferent to your willpower. This is the first welcome to the real world lesson we've been dodging since the crib. Life doesn't have an undo button. What we call psychological pain is usually just the friction between our childish urge for time to be a loop and the cold, hard fact that it's a poisoned arrow moving in one direction. Welcome to the territory of irreversibility. Here, regret isn't a glitch in the system. It's the actual texture of the road. Most of us spend our entire lives trying to superglue the shards of glasses that have already turned to dust, genuinely believing that if we suffer hard enough, if we cry with just the right vibe, the universe will grant us a diplomatic exception and hand back what's gone. But the silence following the crash is the only reply you're getting. It's a silence that isolates. You could be in a packed room, but the sudden click that 1 second ago you were one person and now you're another, someone marked by a move that can't be taken back, builds this invisible wall of bulletproof glass between you and the rest of the world. You become an alien in your own skin, a castaway on dry land. It's this isolation, this ache, born the moment we realized we're the architects of ruins that can't be rebuilt, that we need to get real about. Don't look for copium here. Comfort is just anesthesia for the clueless. Today we're staring into the abyss of our own finitude to understand why, for humans, freedom is actually a life sentence of solitary confinement.
The core idea driving our deepest down bad moments isn't the loss itself. It's the absolute nature of time. When we talk about psychological pain, we're rarely hurting because of the now. We're hurting because of the used to be or the could have been. Irreversibility is the most terrifying feature of physics when applied to the soul. If you snap an arm, your body clocks in to weld the bone back together. There's a recovery, a return to factory settings. But if you snap someone's trust, or if you drop a line that guts the person you love, or if you just let a golden opportunity rot on the shelf of "I'll do it tomorrow," that damage goes straight to the permanent record. There's no eraser for your biography. Martin Heidegger called this thrownness. We were tossed into this world without a tutorial, caught in a current that only flows one way. The awareness of that current is what triggers existential isolation. No one, literally no one, can feel the weight of your timeline for you. Every yes or no you drop is, at the same time, the cold-blooded murder of every other version of yourself that could have existed. By picking one path, you're low-key annihilating infinite others, and that silent slaughter of what-ifs hurts. It hurts because we're hoarders of potential futures, and we hate tossing the keys to doors we never bothered to open. Psychological pain kicks in when we stop looking at the windshield and glue our eyes to the rearview mirror, trying to read signs that faded into the mist miles ago. We get obsessed with fixing what is, by definition, unfixable. The isolation starts here, in the realization that your pain is private property, a plot of land where no one else can set foot, because only you know the exact flavor of that glass that shattered. You become the lone curator of a museum of mistakes, walking among statues of moments the memory keeps on life support, but reality buried ages ago. It's the human paradox. We're social animals, living in solo cells made of unchangeable memories.
Take a look at the modern world. We live in the instant fix era. If you take a selfie and hate it, you slap a filter on it or hit delete. If you send a cringe text, you unsend it before they can see. If a game gets too sweaty, you just reset the level. We've been conditioned to think reality is editable, and that's exactly why psychological pain today hits like a freight train. We've lost the emotional gains needed to handle the definitive. When real life hands us a breakup, a death, or the sudden game over of a career, we try to hit Ctrl+Z in our heads and we glitch out when the command fails. Modern man is a second-chance junkie living in a one-shot world. This lag creates chronic anxiety, this feeling that we're constantly losing grip on stuff we never actually controlled to begin with. Contemporary isolation isn't about being lonely, it's about being disconnected from the raw grit of life. We're surrounded by screens promising us digital immortality while our biology's screaming about our expiration date. The psychological bug of our time is the refusal to mourn. Not just mourning people who've passed, but mourning our own expectations of perfection. We want choices to be light, but they're made of lead. Every click, every choice leaves a footprint the wind won't brush away. Isolation is born when we realize that behind the smiling avatars, everyone is carrying the baggage of choices they're low-key ashamed of but can't edit. The irony of modern life is that the more connected we are, the more main character loneliness we feel in our irreversibility. No one posts the choices they can't take back. We only post the aesthetic new beginnings. Underneath the surface, we're all prisoners of done deals trying to convince each other we still have the remote control when the batteries died years ago. Heidegger, with that cold German logic, reminds us that we are Dasein, the being there. What does that actually mean for your daily grind? It means you're a project that's always being rendered, but with a tragic catch. You didn't pick the assets or the map. You were thrown into a family, an era, a body, and a culture. That's the first big irreversibility. You didn't get a say in the intro, but you're stuck being responsible for the mid-game. Heideggerian philosophy pushes us to the edge by saying the only thing that truly belongs to us is our death. Everything else can be snatched away except our finitude. When you feel that oof moment in your chest, remembering a past screw-up, what you're feeling is a head-on collision between your transcendence, your ability to imagine what could be, and your facticity, the cold hard fact of what you actually did. It's a civil war inside your skull. Philosophy trolls us with this question. If you could go back and change everything, would you even be you? If we strip away the scars, what's left of the soul's fabric? The pain of irreversibility is, honestly, the tax you pay for having an identity. Without the weight of what can't be changed, you'd be smoke, no direction, no density. Isolation, in this context, is the proof that you're one of one. If everyone could feel exactly what you feel, you wouldn't be an individual. You'd just be a generic NPC in a crowd. Heidegger invites us to hug the angst, not as a symptom of a mental break, but as a sign of existential health. Feeling that isolation is the first step toward authenticity. It's recognizing that you're the only one who can write the script from the wreckage. Pain isn't a bug. It's the OS of human consciousness trying to process the sheer scale of being alive in a universe that doesn't pause for you. Let's bring this to the kitchen table. Think about that one breakfast where you said something totally toxic to your partner. The second the words left your mouth, you felt the room temperature drop. You saw the light in their eyes flicker out, like a bulb burning out. In that microsecond, you met irreversibility. You can apologize 1,000 times, buy the whole florist shop, or make promises on your knees. But the word is out there. It's a permanent part of the universe now, etched into the timeline. The relationship might survive, but the scar is there, a constant ping that the before times is a country you can't visit anymore. Or think about the day you flaked on that job interview because you were scared, or the time you didn't say goodbye to someone who left for good. The daily grind is a minefield of definitive acts. We lived like we're in a dress rehearsal, but the curtains have been up since your first breath and the audience is dead silent. Daily isolation happens when you realize no one at the table gets why you're suddenly quiet during dinner. They don't see the ghost of the word you said or the move you didn't make. You're there physically, but your mind is stuck in a past timestamp, desperately trying to rewrite the scene. This is the real psychological hell. being the editor of a movie that's already screening in theaters. You see the glitch in frame 24, frame by frame, but the projection just keeps rolling. Isolation is knowing you're the only one carrying the director's cut, the unedited raw version of yourself. In the day-to-day, we act like everything is just a phase, but the truth is, every gesture is a brushstroke on a canvas that never dries and can never be painted over in white. We're artists of a one-shot masterpiece, and honestly, we're often terrible painters, forced to live in a gallery of our own blunders. Going deeper into the lore, we find Emil Cioran, a dark echo of Heidegger. For Cioran, being born is the first L, the initial disaster. From there, every step is just an exercise in drifting apart. If irreversibility is the rule, isolation is the math. Think about psychological time. In physics, a minute is 60 seconds. For the soul, the minute you're waiting for biopsy results lasts a century, while a decade of good times vanishes in a blink. This lag is what isolates us. We don't live in the same time zone as others. Each of us lives in a private, time-fused bubble, governed by specific traumas and obsessions. When you're drowning in psychological pain, you're literally in a different existential time zone. The philosopher shows us that getting over it is just a language trick. We don't get over anything, we just get used to the weight, like a prisoner gets used to the chains until they feel like a second skin. The irreversibility of trauma makes us experts in a language that no one else speaks fluently. You try to explain your vibe shift, but words are just rough drafts. Saying I'm sad is like trying to describe the ocean by saying it's wet. Isolation is this communication failure built into the human condition. We're islands of consciousness screaming through a fog that never lifts. The theory tells us the fog isn't going anywhere. Philosophical maturity is learning to navigate in the dark, accepting that the light we see in others is just a reflection of our own disparate need for a squad. The pain of being irreversible is the pain of being real in a world that prefers the fake. It's the friction of being a block of marble in a world made of plastic. Inside every one of us, there's a civil war that never hits a ceasefire. On one side, you have the toddler ego that refuses to take no as an answer. It wants to be everything, have everything, and most of all, it wants time to be its little brother. This is the part of you that still thinks you can make it up, that you can Benjamin Button your way back to youth, or win back the love you tossed in the trash. On the other side is your consciousness, the part that watches the clock with the cold energy of a grim reaper. Human internal conflict is born from this tectonic plate shift, the main character urge for infinity crashing into the reality of game over. You feel that tightness in your chest when you know you need to make a move, but you're stuck. Why the lag? Because you know deep down that any choice is a loss. To choose is to die a little. If you pick security, you kill the adventure. If you pick the grind, you kill the peace. The conflict isn't between right and wrong, it's between two rights that can't exist in the same server. And isolation kicks in because this battle is fraught in total silence. You smile at your coworker, talk about the weather, but inside you're dealing with the body of a version of yourself you just sacrificed for a necessary decision. This is the isolation of the tragic hero living inside every average Joe. We're all walking around with literal graveyards inside us, burying dreams every single day just to keep the lights on. Psychological pain is the scream of those ghosts who refuse to stay buried. They're begging for a revert to save point that doesn't exist. Internal conflict is the realization that we are our own jailers and withdrew the key into the ocean the day we were born. How do you live with a self that flops, that ages, and that can't undo the damage? That's the question keeping you up at 3 a.m. while the rest of the world is apparently sleeping like babies. Psychologically, the obsession with irreversibility has a name: rumination. It's the act of chewing on the same past event over and over, hoping that somehow the digestion process will change the ingredients. The human brain, in a desperate attempt to protect us, creates a simulation loop. What if I'd said that? What if I'd shown up 5 minutes earlier? These what-ifs are narrow attempts to create a mod for reality. It's a system error. Isolation happens because rumination yanks you out of the shared world and locks you in a hall of mirrors. The more you ruminate, the more those walls become opaque to anyone on the outside. Depression and anxiety are often just the side effects of this war against time. Psychological pain isn't an item you carry, it's a process you run. You do your pain by refusing to accept the finality of life. Deep psychology shows us the only way out is through the grief of omnipotence. We have to accept we're powerless against the past. This acceptance is what the OGs called wisdom, but today we call it taking the L. However, it's in taking that L that we get our first glimpse of peace. Isolation only ends when we stop trying to be the gods of our own story and accept we're limited characters subject to the rules of the drama. The irreversibility wound only stops bleeding when we stop poking it with what if. But humans are stubborn. We prefer the familiar ache of rumination to the scary void of acceptance. We'd rather be the victim of fate in our own head than the author of a book that has a period at the end and doesn't allow for edits after the publish button is hit. Let me tell you about a guy I found in the deep lore of medical history. He was a cracked surgeon, precision and control or his whole personality. One day, during a standard surgery, he made a millimetric slip, one cut that shouldn't have happened. In seconds, the patient, a young dad, was gone. The surgeon wasn't sued. Shit happens, his peers said. But he was never the same. He spent the rest of his life respawning in that operating room in his mind. He could still feel the haptics of the scalpel, the smell of the scrub, the sound of the heart monitor flatlining. He isolated from his wife, his kids, his day ones. He felt like there was a mark on his forehead that only he could see, but that separated him from all the innocents who had never caused a death. For him, the world split into two, the ones who could undo and him. He spent hours in his library staring at the hands that used to heal and were now in his head just tools of destruction. He tried charity, he tried teaching, but the irreversibility of that cut was a shadow that followed him even in the midday sun. This guy is the end boss symbol of our pain. We all have our millimetric cut. It might not have killed anyone physically, but it might have killed a part of ourselves or a hope in someone else. This surgeon's isolation wasn't a lack of love from others. It was the impossibility of self-forgiveness in a universe where time doesn't forgive anyone. He died decades later, but his life actually ended in that 1 second in the OR. He became a monument to the pain of being human, a reminder that sometimes the price of consciousness is living the rest of your days in a solo lobby where the only crime was being human in a moment where perfect was the requirement. What if I told you everything we've talked about is only half the script? What if irreversibility, this final boss force that isolates and scars us, is actually the only thing that makes your life worth it? Imagine for a sec you had the dev console power to undo anything. Every fail could be erased, every toxic word taken back, every choice tested and reverted. What happens? Your life loses all its weight. Your choices become filler. If you can have every path, no path means anything. Love is only deep because it can be lost forever. Courage only exists because the danger is real and the consequences are locked in. The big plot twist is understanding that irreversibility ache is what anchors you in reality. Without it, we'd be ghosts floating in a vacuum of infinite, meaningless what-ifs. The isolation you feel isn't a gap between you and the world, it's the umbilical cord connecting you to the seriousness of being alive. When you feel the weight of what can't be changed, you're feeling the density of life. It's a ping that you aren't a simulation, that your moves have eternal consequences. That's not a debuff, it's a dignity. We're the only beings known who can look at their own history and feel the weight of the no. Psychological pain is the admission ticket to the theater of consciousness. The moment you stop rage quitting against irreversibility and start using it as a compass, the isolation changes color. It stops being a jail and starts being a sanctuary. You discover the beauty of the crystal glass wasn't in its durability, but in the fact that it could break. Irreversibility is what makes life a masterpiece, not a never-ending draft. Don't beg for a second chance. Honor the first, with the guts of someone who knows there won't be a round two. The door is open. It always was. The problem is we're scared of the freedom that comes with the fact that nothing can be undone. Peace out.